We're going to get into the fourth in our series, Difficult People. And we've been engaging a conversation, a challenging conversation that has led us through several different kinds of people. Now, I know that the four different difficult people that we have mentioned in this series, or will have mentioned in this series, aren't a complete list. Because God knows that there are many difficult people in this world. And unfortunately, we seem to encounter them at least maybe daily, if not weekly. And so Matthew 5:43 through 47 in the message, I want to read this again because this is a challenge to us. This is, you're familiar with the old written law. Love your friend and its unwritten companion. Hate your enemy. I'm challenging that. I'm telling you to love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. That's a challenge. Let the people who grate you wrong, who rub you wrong, who just agitate every ounce of your being, let them bring out the good in you, not the bad, which is very challenging. Let them bring the good at you and not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond to the energies with the energies of prayer. And then you are working out your true selves, your God-created selves. He's telling you to be who you really are. The Bible's telling you that you should be who you are, not who someone else says you are. Work out of that because that's who God made you to be. This is what God does. He gives His best. The sun to warm and the rain to nourish to everyone, regardless, the good and the bad, the nice and the nasty. If all you do is love the lovable, do you expect a bonus? Anyone can do that. If you simply say hello to those who greet you, do you expect a medal? Any run-of-the-mill sinner does that. And so we went through several different people prior to now. We talked about overly needy people, the people that are always there with a need and how overwhelming that can be. We also talked about, in our second message, we talked about manipulative people. And those are the people that know how to play the strings right, who know how to get under your skin, who know how to cause you to be their puppet by the different things that they say. They're able to distort your reality and confuse you in such a way that in many ways they take control of you much like someone takes control of a marionette. And we find ourselves manipulated, and we've got to learn how to notice that and do something about it. And in each one of these messages have challenged you because each and every one of us at times, like the first one, we're needy people. And I thank God that when I come to Him and say, God, I have a need, He doesn't reject me. And we can be controlling people. We can be, manipulative people ourselves. In fact, we are often guilty of attempting to manipulate God. Remember this prayer you guys have never said before? God, if you do this, then I'll do this. Come on, I've said the same prayer repeatedly. God, if you, then I will. And God says, no. If you come to me, I'll take care of the rest. But you got to come to me first. You got to surrender completely. Give yourself all to me. And so the third message was hypocritical people. And this is one of the most difficult people groups that we've talked about because it seems like the church has the most issue with hypocritical people. People that say one thing and actually act in another way. And we talked about last week that weakness isn't bad. Sometimes we feel ourselves crammed into these churches and we feel like we've got to start living a double life because we're not going to fit in. And we fear that if we show vulnerabilities or if we begin to show things that aren't right in our life, that it's going to deter people from wanting to come to church or know God. When in reality, when we're completely honest with every one of our flaws, God is still shining bright. Because people begin to see past you. They don't look to you to be perfect. They look to God to be perfect. And when you're honest about your imperfections, God's the only one getting the glory. The only one. And the truth is we can all be hypocritical at times. And so this morning, we will talk about, just for a few moments, we will talk about critical people. Critical people. How many of you guys have met this type? Like I was thinking about this the other day, and I was having a conversation with Kelly, and I'm like, we know the type. These are the people that pick. Just like every little thing about you, they're just so nitpicky. This is wrong, and that's wrong, and this is right, and that's wrong, and you don't do this right, and you don't chew right, and you don't. These are the people that just nitpick every little thing about you. They just pick you apart. You guys are laughing because you've experienced it before. All right? And we'll talk about this at the end of this message. Some of us are definitely guilty of this ourselves. But if we go to the Bible, Aaron and Miriam, they were, this was Moses' brother and sister. They criticized Moses because of his decision to marry a Cushite woman. They came on to him, they said, they were agitating him. They were causing him confusion about the woman he decided to marry. How many of you guys who've been married have had somebody become critical about the person you chose to be with? Ooh, that's tough when that happens. That's tough. Paul, the guy that we mention a lot in Scripture, the guy who has all of these incredible stories, and we love to read him and read quotes, and we quote him all the time. But do you know that Paul was criticized for being a bad speaker? It's so bad. In Acts chapter 20, Paul was so long-winded. There's this kid sitting in a window, and he's listening to Paul preach. And you know what this kid does? He falls asleep and falls out of a window and plummets to the ground. They thought he was dead. And some translations said he was actually dead. Paul ran down, prayed over him. He woke back up, and they're like, whoo, that was a close one. And you thought I was long-winded. You can laugh. I give you permission. In verse 12, it says, meanwhile, the young man was taken home unhurt, and everyone was greatly relieved. In 2 Corinthians 10:10, it says, for some say Paul's letters are demanding and forceful, but in person he is weak, and his speeches are worthless. Poor guy. I mean, we know that a lot of the New Testament have a lot to say about what Paul spoke, and these people are being mean. Just nitpicky. He doesn't speak well. He doesn't carry himself well when he speaks to crowds and audiences. And then the last one I want to mention is the Pharisees criticized Jesus for eating with sinners and healing on the Sabbath. I mean, Jesus faced all kinds of scrutiny. He was the Son of God. I mean, he came to the earth to change everything. And people couldn't help but pick at him. In Mark 2:16 it says, but when the teachers of the religious law who were Pharisees saw him eating with tax collectors and other sinners, they asked his disciples, why does he eat with such scum? Ooh, hurtful words. I don't know in your Christian walk, in your Christian faith, have you ever associated with people and they're like, oh, you can't associate with them. They're sinful people. Isn't that what Jesus told me to do? Just saying. In Luke 13:14 it says, but the leader in charge of the synagogue was indignant that Jesus had healed her on the Sabbath day. There are 6 days of the week for working, he said to the crowd. Come on these days to be healed, not on the Sabbath. Are you kidding me? I imagine a person in extreme need. Okay, it's the Sabbath. Someone veers off the side of the road and wrecks their vehicle, and you're just driving down there, you're like, oh, it's the Sabbath, I'm not going to help someone in need. See you later. I mean, come on. Really? Really? They were coming at him, and these are the people, and it can be overwhelming. These are the people that just nitpick at every little thing that you do, every little thing that you are. These are the people that you face at work, and for some of you at school. These are the people that insult you for your faith, for your decision to live a life that honors God. These are the people that nitpick at every little thing. Oh, you're going to act pure now. You're going to act holy now. You're going to act like you're better than everybody else, right? I mean, these are the people that make fun of you in the schools. Young people, these are the people that make fun of you in the schools for saying, you know what, I'm saving myself for that day. These are the people that insult you for those kind of things. These are the people that just nitpick every little thing about you. This is and this is tough, but let's be real this morning. This is the spouse or the parent or the child that nitpicks everything. The way we chew our food, the way we load the dishwasher, the way we walk around the house, the way we breathe. Now, don't look at me like that, because you know you've been there. You know, parents, that you've nitpicked your children over the dumbest of things. And some of you children have nitpicked your parents over the dumbest of things. We've got to deal with this, guys. We've got to handle this. We can be nitpicky and critical over the most insignificant of things. This is the family member that you avoid at all costs. Like ducking through an aisle at the grocery store, hoping to God, please, Lord, I hope they didn't see me. The person that just, oh, that's how you spent your money. Oh, that's that's what house you decided to buy. Oh, that's what person you decided to live with and marry. Oh, those are the people. Oh, that's how you're raising your kids. Critical people. And I have to say, I wouldn't be completely honest. And again, I'm not pointing fingers at you, I'm pointing fingers at us. Christian people can be some of the most nitpicky people in the world. We're drawing lines over things that we should not draw lines over. We are critical about things that are just foolishness. Remember, we were, like pull the plank, in some translations it's the 2x4, pull the 2x4 out of your eye before you start dealing with the little sawdust in another person's eye. I mean, yeah, there are moments that we need to go to people who have issue and who have difficulty and challenge, but we have got to be careful that we don't start nitpicking the things that are not important. We need to allow God room. We are not God, and it is not our God-given role to point out every little detail about that person in our church's life that we don't think is lining up right. Love people. Let God transform them. If people begin to change their life because of the way that you're pressuring them, it won't last. That's why I tell teenagers that missionary dating does not work. Okay? Sometimes, rare occasions it does. But don't date somebody and be like, he's going to come to church because I'm going to church. Doesn't work. Don't manipulate people. Don't be critical to people. It's hard, but we've also got to learn to accept criticisms. Now, it wouldn't be fair for me to walk down this road and start talking about critical people if I didn't challenge you at least once this morning to be open to it, because we know that criticisms make us better people. In Proverbs 15, 31 and 32, it says this: if you listen to constructive criticism, the key word being constructive, if you listen to constructive criticism, you will be at home among the wise. If you reject discipline, you only harm yourself. But if you listen to correction, you grow in understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, but most often when someone points out something in our life, we recluse and step back and say, or we begin to defend ourselves in ways that we shouldn't. We should be willing to accept helpful feedback, not hurtful feedback. Never ignore the value of constructive criticism. Never ignore it. You could save yourself from some serious pain later on in life. You ever have somebody come to you with a constructive criticism and they're like, look, I just got to be real with you about something. They tell you something and you're like, I'm going to ignore that, whatever. 2 weeks later, boom, and you're like, man, I wish I would have listened. My kids are doing that all the time. I'm constructively criticizing my son. Don't jump off the bottom part of your sister's bunk bed. You're going to crack your head open. Son, don't do, bam. Cracked your head open. Back to the hospital. He's 3 years old and he's been glued 3 times. Pray for me. And him, yes. Yes. Yep. We've got to accept it. Like it says in verse 32, it says, if you reject discipline, you only harm yourself. But if you listen to correction, you grow in understanding. Sometimes we avoid correction because we don't like how it feels, but the Bible's telling us to approach it and welcome it, to allow it because it's good for us. It's good for us. But what about unjust criticisms? Because that happens. Unjust criticisms. There's 3 prayers that I've told you guys we're praying in every one of these messages in the series. 3 different prayers for each message. The first prayer that I want to encourage you guys to pray when dealing with people that are critical: God, help me know when and how to respond to criticism. Help me know how and when. In Judges 8, 1 through 3, Gideon's doing some amazing things. He's winning battles and so on, and some people start to criticize him. In verse 1 it says, then the people of Ephraim asked Gideon, why have you treated us this way? Why didn't you send for us when you first went out to fight the Midianites? And they argued heatedly with Gideon. But Gideon replied, what have I accomplished compared to you? That's kind of like, wow, that's pretty brave, but brazen sometimes. But I mean, he's explaining it to them. Aren't even the leftover grapes of Ephraim's harvest better than the entire crop of my little clan of Abiezer? God gave you victory over Oreb and Zeeb, the commanders of the Midianites' army. What have I accomplished compared to that? When the men of Ephraim heard Gideon's answer, their anger subsided. We've got to know how to respond. We've got to know when to respond. I mean, there are some people that are going to be critical with us about certain things, and the first inclination that we're going to have, at least in our mind, is to just either verbally or physically pop them right in the forehead. I mean, you have these moments where you're like, oh, you're picking at me again, and you just want to shove back. You want to do something back. You want to say something back. We've got to fight that urge and learn how to sometimes explain ourselves so that they understand better what we're trying to accomplish or what we're doing. When Gideon explained to the Midianites, when he explained to them what was going on, when Ephraim heard Gideon's answer, the anger went away. The anger went away. I don't know if you've ever had one of those circumstances before, but there have been people that have come into my life that have criticized certain things they're doing without a context or a complete understanding of what was going on. And I had an opportunity because they opened their heart to explanation, and I was able to give them an understanding of what was happening, and it diffused the criticism entirely. One of the keys to handling critical people is to react, or not to react, but to respond. When you are in the heat of the moment and you're frustrated and someone's being critical with you and they're tearing you upside one down the other and they're just ripping you apart, sometimes you just want to lash out and cause just as much devastation to them as you felt they caused to you. Fight that urge. Sometimes you've got to be quiet. Don't just react. Wait. Respond. And this is just a side note. I had to put this in here because it bears so much of what we're talking about. Don't try to solve your private problems on a public forum. Facebook is not a place, or Twitter is not a place for your passive-aggressive insults to try to, okay, I'm going to post this status and this person's going to know I'm talking about them. Don't do that. It does nobody any good. It doesn't anybody any good. We have got to learn how to speak. When you, and listen to this thought for a minute. When you are left off worse than when they began, I understand that you're feeling bad, and there's got to be hope at the end of the conversation. You see, we know that it's not constructive criticism when you're left feeling deeper wounds than when they began. Because we know that an enemy multiplies kisses, according to Proverbs, but a friend can wound us. Wounds from a friend can be trusted. There are moments where we're going to be wounded by constructive criticism, but if at the end of the conversation you don't feel hope or like there's better ahead or that this was a good thing even though it was hard to swallow, then you need to begin to ask yourself, is this person really being helpful or are they just being hurtful? Are they just hurting me? And so here's some thoughts right away, and I didn't put these on the PowerPoint, but you can ask me for them later if you want to. Lord, help me know when to respond to critical people. Here are a few easy, immediate responses to help that are helpful ideas. Give them your ear, but within reason. Don't allow someone to destroy you with caustic criticism. Don't allow someone to tear you down. Don't allow someone to destroy you with caustic criticism. Let your body language communicate that you're truly trying to understand. And don't be rude or disrespectful, okay? Avoid an immediate retort such as, yeah, but, or you're wrong, or some other defensive response. Hey, guys, I've been guilty of this too. There are moments where we receive a criticism and we're going to be like, yeah, but, or you're wrong. We want to. Sometimes we just need to keep our mouths shut for a minute and let them expel everything they feel like they need to. Have you ever had a moment where someone just says it, they say it, and then like a couple days later, like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have said it that way. Breathe this silent prayer, Lord, give me grace to respond and not react. Before responding, take a few moments to check what you're about to say. Abe Lincoln himself said that it's good to count to 100 when you get angry before you speak. Just a thought. Look for the proverbial grain of truth in the criticism. If you see more than a grain of truth and you can't process it alone, seek the feedback from a safe person in your life. But be certain that safe person will be honest. Not the person you want to hear say what you want them to say. Okay, that's not a safe and honest person. You need to go to the people that are going to be real with you and honest with you. Ask God to keep you approachable to your critics within reason. You probably don't want a vacation with them. And learn from your critics how to best deliver criticisms to others. When someone delivers criticism that you receive well, ask yourself, what about that, or what about how they did it made it easier to receive for those who botched, and for those who botched it, remember to avoid those tactics. We've got to know when and how. And this is not easy. This is one of those areas that can be very challenging. This can be one of those areas that can be very difficult. I mean, we heard in weeks past that when Peter, in some regards, tried to manipulate Jesus, he said, "Get behind me, Satan." You know, I mean, sometimes that's not always the right response. But sometimes you got to be blunt. You got to be real. You got to be honest. And the second prayer is, God, help me to know when to dismiss invalid criticism. Now, I've met people who have had one criticism after another and still refuse to realize that it's valid. You know, if you find a person after person after person after person, legitimate concerns, people that should be trusted, people that are honest, and people that are, relevant to your life and have an understanding of what's going on in your life, if you have several people come to your life and say, this is going on, you need to deal with this, then maybe it's time for you to say, you know what, I need to receive this. We've got to know when to dismiss it, though. Because every once in a while, we're going to have 2 or 3 hypercritical people that are going to try to point out every little thing about us. Some characterized by being negative and critical. Learn how to differentiate from the helpful people. Mark Batterson said this. I love this, because this is the truth. If you follow in the footsteps of Jesus, you will offend some Pharisees along the way. Like, I want you guys to know that if you listen to what Jesus is telling you to do, if you are completely obedient to his call, if you respond to Jesus Christ and begin to follow in his footsteps, there are going to be people that you will make angry and people that will begin to pick you apart because of the decisions that you are making to live faithful to him. Ephesians 4:29. In the New Living, it talks about a foul language, but it also says, don't use foul or abusive language. I love how the New Living says that. Don't use abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful so that your words will be the encouragement to those who hear them. If someone comes to you and they're criticizing you, one of the surest, clearest ways for you to find out that they're criticizing you in a wrong way is to realize that their language and their speech and their talk to you is abusive in nature. It's not helpful. It's not building you up. It's not encouraging you. It's not increasing your faith. It's not a dose of difficult words, but you know it's for your better. And 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, so encourage each other and build each other up just as you are already doing. There are times when we need to ignore the negative. There are times when criticism comes our way and we got to be, nope, I'm not receiving that, because this is a big risk in this. Jeremy Krakowski, this is what he said. He said, when you look beneath the insult someone gives, you see the insecurity of the person, you can overlook the offense. It's not because you didn't meet their expectation, but it's because they don't meet their own expectation, and they try to take it out on you to make themselves feel better. He says, don't listen to haters. They love the attention. Every answer you give back turns on their stage light. Ignore and focus elsewhere. This is the truth, guys. Truly insecure people are the people that are critical to you and try to pick you apart because it makes them feel better. They're the people that are truly lonely and hurting and broken inside. These are the people that they're haters because they hate themselves. They're haters because they are hurting inside. And they're attempting to tear you down. And if we listen to criticism that's not constructive, it will cause fear and doubt in our own lives. It will cause us to doubt the very things that God has to say about us. In 1 Peter 2:23, it says, He did not retaliate when he was insulted, nor threaten revenge when he suffered. This is Jesus. He left his case in the hands of God, who always judges fairly. You've got to leave it in God's hands. You've got to put his opinions above anybody else's opinions. This is the issue. When people begin to be critical with us and they begin to point out different areas of our life that they're not happy about or they don't agree with, when they are intentionally seeking to tear us down, if we're not careful, we begin to buy into the way they view us above the way God views us. And that is a big issue. Because the only person who should have the last say about anything about who you are is God and God alone. Because He is the one who created you. He is the one who made you. He's the one who said you are who you are. He formed your being. God made you. Don't let anybody else tell you who they think you are above, and believe that above God's view of you. Because the truth is becoming obsessed with what people think about you is the quickest way to forget what God thinks about you. If you obsess over what your critics have to say, because you will have critics, if you follow Jesus, if you listen and are obedient, there are going to be people that are going to try to tear you down. You guys, I got news, and this is truth. As our church continues to gain momentum and things happen, we're going to have critics out there. We're going to have people out there that are going to say, no, it's not real. No, he must not be preaching the full truth. There must be something not right in order for things to be happening so awesomely there. I'm telling you, when you follow in the footsteps of Jesus Christ, there are going to be people that come into your life and they will tear you down on purpose because you're following what Jesus wanted you to follow. 1 Thessalonians 2:4 says, For we speak as messengers who have been approved by God to be entrusted with the good news. Our purpose is to please God, not people. Live to honor Him above everything else. Live to honor Him above everything else. Live to His purpose. Live to His purpose. You know, the devil is going to do his best to try to tear you down. The devil's going to do his best to try to make you feel like you're this little. The devil's going to do his best to make you feel like you aren't that you aren't God's favorite. And I know that sounds bizarre because we're like, well, that's unfair for me to say, but God is big enough to say that each and every one of us is His favorite. And the devil wants you to believe that you're worthless. The devil wants you to believe that you're nothing. The devil wants you to believe lies about yourself. And the enemy will send anyone he can into your life to nitpick and to tear you down in an attempt to confuse you and cause you to doubt who God and God alone says you are. Never put your critic's speech above what God has to say. Never. Never, never, never. Don't believe the lies that would cause you to doubt what God has to say specifically about you. And the last prayer we need to ask ourselves real quick, God, help me overcome my critical nature. Proverbs 12:18 says, some people make cutting remarks, but the words of the wise bring healing. The word of the wise bring healing. We can be the most difficult people there is. Christians are notorious at times for picking each other apart. I would challenge you this morning to love people up, not tear them down. I've always found with my children, you believe the best in them. You tell them how great they are. You tell them your expectation of them because you know that it's in them because of what God has put in them. They'll rise to the occasion. They may falter every once in a while. They may make mistakes. They may do things that they shouldn't. But you need to love people up, not tear them down. You need to, it is not anybody's God-given role to make someone humble. You let God do the humbling. You let God do the humbling. You see, critical actions reveal weakness, the sin and the pride in our own hearts. The more critical we are, the smaller of a person we are, because our pride says, I'm right and everyone else is wrong, and our opinion becomes so big that we feel like it's our duty to tell them or to point out their flaws or their wrongs. I'm telling you, there are moments, honestly and sincerely, where God will say, hey, I have a difficult challenge for you. You need to go and say something to someone about such and such. And you'll say, okay, here we go. But when you go to them, listen to Proverbs 12:18. When you go to them, don't make cutting remarks. Bring healing. Because we know that when a surgeon goes to work on a human body, they have to cut out certain things sometimes. And that cutting can hurt. It can be difficult. It can be painful. It can even have some time to heal. But we know that healing is coming. We know that it's for the betterment of that person. Love people up to the place you believe they should be. You guys, listen to this. You can't criticize your spouse into a better marriage. You can't criticize your kids into being better children. You can't criticize your boss or co-workers into more productivity. You can't criticize your friends into being better friends. You can't criticize your church into the place you want it. Guys, I'm right there with you. We have got to be honest with ourselves and say, okay, Lord, help me not to be critical in nature, because criticism in the wrong way, critical attitudes and spirits are venom. And I want to mention this too, because this is important. I'm talking about being critical towards others, but sometimes we are our own worst critic. And it should be mentioned this morning that sometimes we find ourselves picking ourselves apart in ways that no one else has to. We look in the mirror. We think about ourselves in several different ways. It could be our physical appearance. It could be some of the mistakes that we've made in this life. But we are given a moment of silence, and the voices in our head become so overwhelming, and we begin to pick our own selves completely apart. Some of us can be so depressed because of our own critical actions towards ourselves. Listen to what God has to say above everything else, above what you even have to say about yourself. Because I know that there are perspectives that we believe that are so contrary to what He has to say about you. I mean, yesterday, and I'm just going to be completely transparent for a moment. Yesterday, I was doing a funeral service for Aaron's sister. And I remember walking into the room, and there were people everywhere. People that were finding out for the first time that I was a pastor. People that were discovering for the first time who I was. People that I'd connected with all along that just didn't know. And I'm in the bathroom, and I'm just being honest with you guys, I'm literally shaking. And I'm thinking to myself, man, you're an idiot. This is bad. This is terrible. You put a bad outline together. This is going to be awful. This is going to be rotten. You're going to screw everything up. These people are never going to want to turn to God because... and it went on and on and on. And I remember looking in the mirror in that bathroom, and I remember telling myself, as crazy as this sounds, I am not that person. I am who God says I am. And if I walk out there with a humble heart and a humble spirit, God's going to use me. He's going to use me. He's going to use me. Don't believe the lies that you even tell yourself. Don't. The last person that should have any say about who you are is God and God alone. Let me ask you these last questions in closing, and then I'm going to go run back there and get changed real quick for the baptisms. New life. How do you typically respond to constructive criticism? How has it benefited you? Because this could be the hardest things to swallow. There are people that come to us, people that come to me. People that come to you then say, I got bad news, but it's good news. I got to tell you some things that are challenging, but it's for the better of you. It's to improve you. How do you typically respond to that? Do you lash back or do you welcome it? Approach criticism right, because it's good for you. Second question, what types of unjust criticism are you currently receiving? How has that criticism impacted you? Some of you right now are dealing with a lie. And it's been told to you over and over and over and over and over again. It could be your parent, it could be your sibling, it could be your child, it could be a friend who's not really a friend. And it's been said so many times that you believed it. And you're walking around maimed because of a lie that someone said over and over and over again. It could be a spouse. What are you dealing with right now? What is the criticism? And for some of us, what do you keep telling yourself every day that is completely inaccurate? It's time to pinpoint it and tell the devil to get out of your head. He's a liar. He's a liar. And we often criticize others to make ourselves feel better. What insecurities might be fueling your own critical nature of others? Be honest. This will make you better. This will make you better. The last question I want to ask you this morning is, what steps do you need to take to put God's opinion of you ahead of other people's opinions? You want to know a good place to start? The Bible. Read it every day. And then, start small and get more and more and more. Jump into the Word constantly. Read the Bible. One of the greatest ways for you to tear down the insecurities and tear down the own thoughts that you have of yourself, or the thoughts that your own insecure feelings that you begin to point out flaws in other people. One of the greatest ways is to increase your ingestion of truth. Just keep reading the Bible. Keep reading the Word. Keep allowing it to come in and just think about it, ponder on it, pray about it, meditate, memorize. Guys, put sticky notes on your mirror when you walk into your bathroom in the morning. Look at the sticky note that alerts you to who God says you are before you even see yourself. Some of you need to do that. Some of you need to do that. Because those insecurities are so strong. So strong. Don't believe the lies. Don't. He loves you. He adores you so much that he let his son die for you. That's love. That's love. Don't for a minute believe that you're not worthy of his love. Even in our greatest failure, he made us worthy through his son, Jesus. Telling you. You with me? Yes. Heavenly Father, I pray right now that this message would just sink in deep, God, that you would touch our hearts, that you would help us, Lord, to not be affected by the critical people that are around us, Lord, that we would not be torn down by their views and their thoughts and their perspectives, and God, that we would place our trust in you and you alone above every other thing that has ever been spoken over us. Even the lies that we tell ourselves, God, I pray that we would stand above it. Let this sink in deep, Lord. Amen.